get a lot of questions around just where do I stand with cybersecurity? Where are my strengths? What are my vulnerabilities? And what do I do with that information? And so I'm excited to be joined by really two experts in the cybersecurity space. Our own Joey Howland, he's VC3's Chief Information Security Officer. Joe, give him a wave. He has been in the IT industry for over 20 years and has been leading VC3 security initiatives and those of our clients for the last several years as well. And then also Bo J. Kumar, who is channel manager with Cyberstone. Cyberstone is one of our cybersecurity partners, and Bo's been in the cybersecurity space for over 7 years as well. So very excited to have their expertise to guide us through this conversation this morning. And just a couple housekeeping things before we get started. The first is I will be manning our chat, and so encourage you to share any of your questions with us as we go through the presentation. We'll have some time at the end to walk through those questions and have Bo and Joey give their insight. And then also we'll have some interactive polls as we go through the presentation too, and so encourage you to join us in those polls as well. So with that, I'll step back and kick it over to Joey to get us started, and I will share my screen so we can all see the presentation here.
All right, great. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I really appreciate everybody giving their time to this. I personally think this is an incredibly important topic. I think Bo joins me in that belief. And the more we can do to help educate people just on some general cybersecurity best practices and things that you need to be doing as an organization, the more secure, the better we will all be, the better off we'll all be as organizations. So thanks for taking this time. I think it's an important topic, and I appreciate you coming in. And Bo, hello to you. Thanks for joining me on this today.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I appreciate it. It's always great working with you guys and educating people on cybersecurity.
Excellent. All right. So I guess the first thing I really just want to talk about here is just why this is so critical. And we could give you literally hundreds of statistics of why cybersecurity is critical. But I think the three on this slide are really three things that really drive the point home. First of all, by the end of this year, organizations are expected to have spent $6 trillion combating cybercrime. And that isn't preventative cost. That is reactive. We were breached. We have to recover. We have to pay a ransom. Some type of recovery cost to the impact of cybercrime. $6 trillion. I mean, that is just a crazy number. And then the second thing we see is just this consumer confidence number. Last year, 3 billion PII records were stolen. PII is personally identifiable information. It's names, it's birthdays, it's addresses, it's email addresses, anything that can really identify somebody as a unique individual. And 3 billion records were stolen last year. So that has an impact on everybody's confidence in the marketplace, right? How confident am I going to be signing up for service if I'm nervous my information is going to be lost? And then this last one, I think, speaks directly to organizations. Over the past few years, we've seen a lot of attacks that were targeted at redirecting direct deposit. So we'll get a finance department or an HR department that will be cleverly phished. It will look like an employee asking to redirect their direct deposit to a new bank account. It's fraudulent, and unfortunately, the organization will do what is asked because they think, I know this individual, this person's just asking me to change their payroll, and they don't realize that this has happened until that employee calls them and says, hey, why didn't I get paid this much? So it is literally impacting our employees' wallets, right? It's impacting their bottom line, their families. So we've got to do a better job of protecting ourselves as organizations, both from the financial liability side to protect the people who are interested in our services, and also to protect our employees. So I really love these three statistics that are out here.
I couldn't agree more, Joe. And throughout this presentation, you'll hear, Joe and I working together. Cyberstone, we work throughout the United States with several different organizations and different verticals. So I'll be giving you guys a lot of real-time examples that I've seen over just the last 12 months. The financial impact is really what I'm going to talk about on this one. So like I said, Cyberstone, we do work in many different verticals. A lot of those you're going to see are, the finance, the healthcare, the manufacturing, all these different regulated businesses that have to be compliant, that they've had these things that they have to adhere to, for the last several years, if not a decade. What you don't really hear about is organizations that are not regulated. An example that I'll give you, we were working with an organization in upstate New York, a meatball manufacturing organization. They didn't really have any security in place. They didn't have to be regulated. However, when they did get breached, they were down for about 4 hours before they were able to get up and running again. Per hour, it was costing them $100,000 in downtime. So just because they didn't need cybersecurity, they didn't do it. They didn't see the financial impact that it could cause. However, after that, we've been working with them, and they've probably got one of the tightest security programs that I've seen now. But it really is. It's unfortunate that they had to learn that $400,000 lesson.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it'd be so much better to put this stuff in place ahead of time than reacting to it. Appreciate that. So, this next thing, Bo, I think you came up with this analogy, or you gave us this analogy, and I think it's a great way to help really envision cybersecurity. So, man, I just want you to talk us through this slide.
Absolutely, Joe. And as much as I do want to take credit for this, I actually heard it from somebody else and I stole it from them. But it's a great analogy and I loved it because regardless how technical you are, or if you're not technical at all, this is something that, I always say that my mom doesn't understand what I do for a living. She doesn't understand what cybersecurity is. So this is the analogy that I give to her. You think about your network as your house. If you're a burglar that's going to be going in and going to rob this house, you're going to scope out the house. You're going to walk around. You're going to look for weaknesses, for vulnerabilities, throughout the house. Maybe I'm going to look and see that, your front lock, it looks a little outdated. It looks very easy to pick and to break into. Maybe I walk around back and I see that there's a back window that's a door or ajar, and I'd be able to get in through there. And then maybe, it's a 3-story house. I see on the very top floor, the 3rd floor, there's a wide open window. So the analogy that I give, these are all vulnerabilities, and we rate them on high, medium, and low. So obviously that front door, that lock in the front door, that's going to be the first thing that a burglar sees. That's a very critical vulnerability that you're going to want to fix. The back window, you probably should still get it fixed, but maybe a burglar is a little bit too scared to walk around to the back. So that could be like a medium or a high vulnerability throughout your network. And the 3rd floor, the window that's wide open, the chance of a burglar coming over there and nobody seeing him with a 30-foot ladder, that's a very, very low vulnerability. It's a very, very low likelihood that a burglar is going to come in and break in that way. So throughout those vulnerabilities, it's just really about owning them and knowing. So every organization is going to have vulnerabilities at every time, and some are going to be cheaper to fix than others. Some could just be a patch, and then others you're just going to own. Like, hey, listen, we know that 3rd floor window's open. We're willing to take that risk and just adhere to that. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add on to that, Joe.
No, I think it's a great analogy. We're going to come back to this analogy a little bit later, but I think if there's one takeaway from this entire presentation, it's only open your 3rd door windows, right? Your 3rd floor windows, right? All right. So what do we do about cybersecurity, right? So how do we approach this, and how do we start securing our organizations? And I think this next slide is helpful to that. So what we have pictured here is something called the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework. And what this framework does is it really is these pillars that build on top of each other to give an organization kind of a mature, comprehensive cybersecurity platform. So the way this works is you start down in that blue section, and we need to identify what it is that we are trying to protect. Maybe we're a retailer doing online business and we collect a ton of credit card information. So we know we've got credit cards we need to protect. Maybe we're a healthcare organization and we're storing PHI. We know we've got to store that. We've got to protect that personal healthcare information, right? We've got to, maybe it's just our employees. Maybe we've got our employees' social security numbers. That's what we need to protect. But what is it specifically that we're trying to protect? We need to understand that. Then we get up to this protect tab that says, okay, what am I going to do to protect that information or protect whatever it is, that whatever asset is I'm trying to hold on to. And I'm going to do that through antivirus and firewalls and anti-spam solutions. And these are the things I think most organizations do fairly well. They put these preventative measures in place. The problem is you now have to move up to that next tier, which is detect. So now I've got all of these preventative measures in place, but if I don't know what they're doing, if I don't know if they failed, if I don't know that somebody got a virus and the virus signature, the virus software automatically cleaned it, or maybe the virus software failed to clean it or failed to detect it, if I don't see these things, I'm missing that detect piece. That's what's going to let me know I have an active incident, an active issue that I've got to go chase down and respond to, which takes me to the response, right? So now I've got to respond. What am I going to do when there is an incident detected? And this could be a very benign incident. It could be a user who clicked on something and they got adware installed on their machine. Yes, they're going to get a bunch of banners and pop-ups on their machine, but probably not that significant. Or it could be the worst case, which is somebody clicked on something and now I've got an attacker on my network remote controlling a PC and I don't even know it, right? So or I do know it, hopefully, because I've got the detect in place. But what are my responses going to be based on those different scenarios? And then finally, it's that recover piece, right? Once I've detected an issue, I've responded to it, I've mitigated it, how do I get back to productive life, get back to life as normal? And that's where I think we see some organizations as well with backups and disaster recovery plans. But Bo, as you enter into organizations in your business, like where do you typically see people falling on this maturity model? Where are they typically strong? Where are they typically weak?
That's a great question, Joe, and you did a great job just breaking down those pillars of NIST. Very understandable. With most organizations that we're seeing, very, we'll say new to security, very in their infancy stage of security, we always see that most organizations are going to have a lot of the two pillars that they're the strongest at are the protect and the recover. Most organizations, like Joe did mention, you guys are going to have your antivirus in place. You're going to have your malware in place. You're going to have all those things in place to protect your antivirus, all that good stuff. Then a lot of organizations too as well are going to have the recover. They're going to have some type of backup in place. This is good. Not great, but it's good. The main thing that a lot of organizations skip, and surprisingly enough, it's number one. The identify, which is a huge factor. You can identify by doing a risk assessment on your organization. If you've never done one, I strongly recommend it. Really what the identifying part is doing with that risk assessment, we're identifying everything that needs to get protected, that needs to get detected, that we're going to need to respond to, and how we're going to recover. So really what the identifying is doing is it's creating you a security roadmap to really lead you into the future and make sure that your protection, all your controls, you're protecting the right things, you're detecting the right things, you're responding to the right things, and then if and when that does happen, you guys are able to recover, and hopefully not cause too much damage.
Yeah, great. I appreciate that. So we've got this pillar, we've got this NIST framework. So let's talk about the opposite side of this. Oh, sorry, I'm forgetting the poll. So quick audience poll here. So if you don't mind, go ahead and please let us know where do you feel that you fall as an organization into these 5 NIST stages? Do you think you've got one of these covered really well? Do you think you got a couple of them? Do you think you have all 5 of these nailed and you have a great mature cybersecurity model? So again, just to while you guys submit those votes, I'm just going to echo exactly what Bo said. A lot of times when we walk into organizations, typically what we see are really that second level. We see that one pretty strong. We see a lot of good antivirus. We see systems getting patched on a regular basis. We see firewalls in place, but really that first level is skipped frequently. Most organizations don't really know what it is they are trying to protect. So even though they put some preventative measures in place, they may have done it ineffectively, or maybe they're putting the wrong emphasis in the wrong areas because they really don't know where their sensitive data is. And then again, we'll see on the back side of that, we will see on the top side, we'll see some recovery. We'll see some backup plans. We'll see some disaster recovery. We'll see cloud-based backups so that organizations have the ability to recover. But again, they skip those two middle tiers. So let's see if we have this queued up. All right, so I think we're seeing kind of, well, we're seeing about half the organizations kind of agree with what Bo and I are saying. You think you've got 2 or 3 of those in place and you're strong there, and the other half have got all 5, which is great. If you have gone through this framework and you have really built that stack and understand all of those components, you are in a strong cybersecurity position. So I'm actually excited to see that half of you have got all 5 in place.
Yeah, kudos to you guys. You guys can just drop off. You're all done. There's no more else we could teach you.
All right, so let's go to the flip side of this. What is it that we typically see in an attack? So over the past couple of years, one thing that has become very apparent is that employees are our primary target. 95% of the successful cyber attacks in the past 2 years have started in email. Yes, you still have to protect your firewall. Yes, you still have to make sure your systems are secure and people can't come in through that method. But man, it is a lot easier to send an email, a clever email to an employee and get them to click on a link than it is to hack through a firewall. So we're seeing these attacks through phishing. And those attacks can come from, again, relatively benign. I'm just trying to see if there's a live body there, so maybe I can get some more information from you, all the way up to probably the worst case scenario, which is getting an employee to click on a link that downloads and installs remote access software into your network. So Bo, I'm gonna toss it to you with that. So we're in the worst case scenario. Somebody's downloaded remote access software on a machine. They aren't aware that it's there. What happens after that? What are the attackers trying to do?
That's a great question, Joe. So I'll actually, once again, I'll go back to a live example that we have. Very unfortunate. So it's an organization. There are about 13 to 14 locations, a very large insurance organization that we work with on the regular. They have all 5 of the NIST pillars. They're very, very security mature. But the way this attack came in, to be completely honest, it's really not their fault for clicking this link. So what happened is they're an insurance company and they were working back and forth with the Ford dealership, looking to get a quote for one of their, claims or whatever on an F-250 pickup truck. So this insurance rep and this dealership is going back and forth for a couple days, exchanging emails back and forth, something they talk to on the regular basis. However, the Ford dealership, their security was not really up to par. They got breached, and what happened is they just got control of that one mailbox. So what they did is they went into that person's outgoing mailbox, looked to see who they were talking with, and then just responded to that person. So me being in the insurance carrier side, I see I've been talking back and forth to the same person I talked to, really frequently over the last 2 years. I've been in communication with this person. I asked them for a quote, and what they're doing is they're giving me the quote. So they're the Ford dealership, the malicious person, sending back a payload, sending back an encrypted file saying, here's the quote for that F-250 that you were looking for. Not knowing any better, the insurance company, the insurance person clicks the link. Nothing happens. They click it again, nothing happens. They click it again, nothing happens. Right there, they should have realized that there's something wrong. There's something that they should be alerted to. Nothing happened. They figured, whatever, I'm just going to respond back and try to say, hey, this didn't work. However, within 20 minutes, this bad guy had control of 200 different machines. They moved laterally throughout the building or throughout the network and see how many see how many computers they can compromise. Luckily, this insurance company, very, very mature, like I said. The third pillar of NIST, as Joe was talking about earlier, the detect, they actually had a SOC in place, which is a security operations center. It's a 24/7 monitoring system. They detected that right away and shut it down, contained the breach to those 200 machines. And when the bad guys tried to send that payload back out, it was actually an organized crime group out in Iran. They realized, hey, look at, this insurance company, they don't normally send things to Iran. Let's flag this, let's contain it, let's not let it go out there. So they were able to protect it. It did take a couple days to get everything back. They had a great recovery system, a great response plan in place. They knew exactly what to do when a breach happened, so they knew how to respond to it. They had the great backups in place. They were able to recover it. It did cost them some downtime, but none of their customers' files got compromised. None of them got breached. The funny thing is, so we're working on this. We're helping them, get back all their information, get them up and running. Working with an MSP similar to VC3. We get them back up and running. 2 days later, the FBI comes up and to the insurance company, like, hey, we think that you might be the target of an attack, so you might want to be looking. We're like, yeah, we detected that 2 days ago. We're already back up and running. Thanks, FBI. So the FBI is out there to help you, but having good security controls in place, we were able to get up and running, contain this breach, and not cause them any financial damage besides a little bit of downtime, but it could have been a lot worse. I've seen organizations completely get shut down and never be able to recover from that. So the fact that we were able to respond faster than the FBI, and it's not just because of Cyberstone, it's not just because of MSPs like VC3, it's because this company was doing their due diligence and they were practicing the security. All 5 pillars of NIST and everything that they had in place was set up for this one specific moment when it happened, and everything was able to be contained.
Yeah, and that's a scary story and an encouraging story at the same time, because even having all 5 pillars in place, even having a mature cybersecurity program, they were still able to be breached. And I think that really speaks to the importance of having that mature model, because there is no guarantee that you're not going to get breached. And in fact, I almost think the opposite. If somebody decides, if one of the more sophisticated attacker groups decides, I want to get into this system, they are probably going to find their way in somehow,
Absolutely.
some way. So how quickly can you detect it? How quickly can you mitigate that attack and get back to recovered and get back to a stable state is critical. And having all of those tiers in place is going to help you do that. Because what I don't think people understand is they think, especially with ransomware, they think, okay, I click on the email and I'm immediately going to start seeing I'm going to get the message saying, oh, my files have been encrypted. But that is not what we've seen over the past couple of years. What we're seeing is that attacker gets into the network like they did at this insurance company. Unfortunately, without all those other tiers, what that attacker starts to do is they start probing the network. Like Bo said, they spread that across a couple hundred machines in a couple hours. It does not take them long to expand the footprint across the network. They can do it very quickly. And then they're going to start looking for data that they want to steal. Do you have any kind of confidential data or PII or PHI or whatever it is that's in your environment that maybe I can steal and sell on the black market? Maybe I can steal it and use that as a mechanism to hold you hostage when I do put the ransomware in place. I'm going to look at your backups. Can I cripple your backups so that you have to pay me the ransom if you want your data back? Can I cripple your antivirus? What can I do to stage the most effective attack possible? And this statistic from IBM is a little bit frightening. And that says that these attackers sit in your network for an average of 206 days before you know that they are there. They are there for months planning the attack to make it hit the hardest and have the highest level of impact. So again, back to that detect tier, you've got to be able to identify that something's been going on in the network so that you can kick them out before they've been sitting there for months trying to figure out how to make the attack as effective as possible.
I couldn't have said it better, Joe.
All right, next poll. So, and I gave the answer away, I'm sorry. I'm blowing it, David. What percentage of successful cyber attacks start with phishing? So really, this is a test to see if you're paying attention.
And just to echo a little bit too as well, I think 95 might even be, some of our senior analysts, they'll even go to say 100% or 99. I go, you can't say 100% attacks, but I would say that is pretty minimal.
Yeah, we definitely see, we do still occasionally see and hear about, especially Windows remote desktop attacks. That's still a critical vulnerability. A lot of people don't understand that they've got those servers out there that are vulnerable, and once they're found, the attackers are relentless trying to break into those. But again, that's still a harder path to go down than email phishing. All right, so most of you are paying attention, so that's good. I appreciate that. But yes, again, 95% of the attacks over the past couple of years have started with phishing. So really, we have got to do some basic things to help protect our environment. So I'm going to start here. This pretty much sits in that protection tier, but this is the baseline. This is what every organization needs to have in place. And really, I need to have firewalls. Like, I know it's coming in through phishing, but those firewalls do a lot of things besides just protect you from an external attack. A good firewall can actually stop a connection to a known bad site to download malware. So having good firewalls in place is critical. Having good antivirus, good anti-spam. Those basic tools that we all know about are so important to us. Patching is so important. There have been countless vulnerabilities that have been identified that we've known about, that organizations know the vulnerabilities out there. They neglect to patch in a timely fashion, and then unfortunately those vulnerabilities are used against them. So patching those vulnerabilities as soon as they're identified. Backups, properly configured backups. I've been in IT for 25 years, and I feel like I've been talking about backups and preaching backups that entire time, and it hasn't changed. I'm still preaching about backups. Backups are so important to your organization's ability to ensure data integrity. If that attack happens, having a good, properly configured backup will allow you to recover more quickly. And that doesn't just mean I've got the servers and I'm backing up the data to tape on a nightly basis, or backing it up to a local disk on a nightly basis. I've got to be copying that stuff somewhere else. And I've got to be doing it in a way that keeps it offline, so that if an attacker does get in my environment, they can't get to my backup data. That is critical. And then employee awareness. We talked about 95% of the attacks are starting in phishing, so we've got to do a better job of training our employees, making sure they understand this, making sure they know how to identify a phishing attack, making sure that they are quote unquote click cautious instead of click curious, that they know to be careful before they click on those links in an email. And then good password policies, I mean, that's just critical. And then good computer use policies. Computer use policies are important to an organization because they just establish a baseline for your employees and say, hey, this is the expected good, safe behavior that we want you to follow. It sets that baseline for your employees so they know where they stand. If you don't put those policies in place and you've never said to your employee, we don't care if you live on Facebook all day long clicking on links and videos in Facebook, you are introducing risk into your organization. You got anything to add on this, Bo?
No, yeah, just exactly what I was saying earlier. The only thing I could think of is, that, a lot of people think that this, exactly what Joe just said, all these things, this is cybersecurity, this is all of cybersecurity. What I can't stress, this is the bare minimum of cybersecurity. Majority of these things are falling in what most organizations have, that second pillar, that the protect. But what they're forgetting to do, just, you're gonna keep hearing me echo the same thing too as well. They're not doing a risk assessment. They're not identifying what they actually need to protect. They're not actively doing vulnerability testing, so where they could see where they might be missing patches. They're not regularly doing penetration tests, actively trying to break down their system to see how they can improve. The organizations that are getting breached, they might have all these things in place, and then when they get breached, they don't know what to do because they don't have an active incident response plan in place. So this is definitely a great start. But if you guys don't have an active incident response plan in place, if you guys aren't doing vulnerability or penetration testing, if you guys, haven't done risk assessments, these are all things that I recommend. Obviously I'm in the cybersecurity industry, so I'm very passionate about it. But it's a good start having all those things that Joe listed, but just improving. We're never going to end. This is constantly, every time that we figure out how to prevent something, the bad guys are coming up with another way. 10 years ago, it might have just been, a kid in his mom's basement. Now they're literally organized crime groups overseas. They're going into an office every day. They're sitting down. They have levels. They have a president. They have a CEO. They have a Joe Howland. They have a CISO over there. They have everything that we have. They're very, very organized.
Yeah. So I guess that takes us to, how do we know where our holes are, and how do we know where we've still got vulnerabilities and where we've got gaps in our defenses? And here's a couple tools that I'm just going to speak very quickly to these, because I think there's sometimes confusion when people hear the term vulnerability scan and penetration test. Most people kind of equate these two things as the same thing. A vulnerability scan is a scan that identifies potential issues. You're looking from the outside in, trying to just identify where those vulnerabilities are. And a penetration test is really going to test those defenses. It's not just identifying them, it's actually a security expert testing those defenses actively to see how effective they are. And here, Bo, I'm going to kick it right back to you so you can go back to that analogy, because you use that house analogy, and I think this is a great way to break these two apart.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. Everything loops back around, just like in security.
That's right.
So just going back to when we were talking about originally on slide 3, the analogy of a house. So how we can detect that front door. That front door is a vulnerability. That back window is a medium vulnerability. So think about the penetration test. We're going to take it the next step farther. We are going to break into this house. What's going to happen when I pick that front lock? Can I get in through that front lock, or was it more secure than I thought? You know what? It wasn't more secure. I can get in. What happens though when I walk into your house? Is there going to be an alarm system that goes off? Can I easily turn that off? Is there going to be a dog that tries to bite my face off? Or can I get around that by tossing the dog a sleeping pill filled steak, and now the dog's passed out? So having these defenses in place, how strong are they? And really, that's what a penetration test is going to do. We're going to try to break down all the vulnerabilities that we already discovered. We're going to try to break down and see how far we can get through your network, see if we can get to the back of the house, see if we can get into your safe, see if we can open that safe, and see if we can get all your information. Really, what we're trying to do when we're actively trying to do these pen tests, our security analyst, he's great. Just a little background on him. We actually stole him from the New York State Attorney General's office. Far superior. He considers it very insulting if he can't break down your network, and there's very few that he can't get into. We refer to it as capture the flag, where he's really, his end goal is to try to see how far he can get throughout your organization. And his end goal is to create a domain admin. Once he's got that domain admin, he can really do anything that he wants in that network, and he owns it. So what we do, or what any good organization is going to do when they're doing a penetration test on your organization, they're going to document all these things and say, hey, listen, you probably want to toughen up your dog because, I gave him a steak and he just ran away. It took me about 30 seconds to break down your alarm system that went off. It had no protection. It was very easy to just get around, to just, enter in a code that I was able to find off the dark web because your employee is using summer 2020 as their password. So just tying back to everything, guys, just educating everybody, and really just doing these things on a minimally yearly basis. You should be testing your network with a penetration test, and a lot more frequently on a vulnerability assessment. A lot of organizations I see doing monthly or quarterly on that, just because what we're seeing changing, it's changing monthly, it's changing daily, it's changing weekly. So the vulnerabilities that were out last week, we might have had patches for them, we might have fixed them, but the bad guys already got new ones. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, Joe.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, because I really appreciate that point. This is something that needs to be recurring. Cybersecurity is not a snapshot. It is not a point in time. It is a journey, and it's a continuous journey. We're always going to be moving along that line. So we got another poll here. So has your organization had a vulnerability scan or a penetration test? So have you had one of these things done? And I am curious because I would like to know how many organizations out there are actually actively pursuing these vulnerabilities and trying to work to identify the weaknesses in their environment. And I guess what we will do too as well, I mean, we're going to talk a little bit here about the different types of penetration tests because I think that's something important for people to understand. But let's go ahead and see what our poll results are first.
Crossing my fingers that it's 100%.
Yeah. 67% said no. All right. So for those of you out there, 50% of you said you had a full NIST framework and you had all 5 of those tiers in place. I challenge you organizations to go get a pen test done. Validate that those things are in place as much as you think they are, because that really is, it is critical for us to test those defenses and understand whether or not we really are as secure as we think we are. And you know, I will pick on VC3 as an organization as quick as anybody. You know, I have very competent engineers. I've got guys who know what they are doing. They are extremely professional. They've got years of experience. But sometimes they are blind to the weaknesses in their own setups, right? Like they miss things. They're not thinking about something from a different, or they think something's secure, and then when it gets put in place, it's not as secure as they think. So even at VC3, we have these annual pen tests done because we want to make sure that this stuff is tightened up as much as we think it is. So I really challenge you to go get those pen tests. Now, I will also say this. So we talked about the vulnerability scans. That's really kind of a surfacey level thing. That's just a scan telling you where you have vulnerabilities. But if you go and ask for a pen test, you need to be aware there's a couple different kinds of pen tests. So Bo, do you want to talk about these different kinds of pen tests that you guys do?
Yeah, yep. So, so the main types of pen tests that you usually see organizations doing, I'll do internal, internal and external kind of combined. Where it says on here, it can be helpful for compliance. A lot of these regulations, we'll see, and I don't want to pick on. Hopefully, there's none in here. I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but doctors' offices are a huge one that we see. They're just because they fall underneath the HIPAA compliance, but they're usually very, very small, and the things they have to do can be costly as far as keeping them HIPAA compliance. So one of the things on part of the HIPAA compliance says that you need to regularly test your controls. So technically, they can get away with just doing an external pen test, to get away with compliance. And once again, that's that where we're going to be looking around the outside, finding those vulnerabilities and try to exploit those vulnerabilities. The internal is, this is what your organization should be doing, because once again, this is where we're seeing the 95 plus coming in on those phishing attacks. Somebody clicking a link, somebody, a disgruntled employee. Another one that we've seen, which is, people go into large organizations, they'll see that cleaning crew that's going in and out every day, through in and throughout. They'll give them a little USB stick or a Raspberry Pi, say, hey, dude, here's $500. Can you go plug this into the network for me? And then right there, you just, you got somebody plugging that in because, that once again, not picking on janitors, but I mean, if you're, especially during coronavirus, if somebody's going to offer you an extra $500, you might be down on your luck and you need some extra money. The other ones, that are great to do too as well are wireless assessments. The physical ones, these ones, some organizations are still doing them. They are at Cyberzone. We've actually gotten in trouble for doing them. Long story, I won't go into that. That'll take 20 minutes to talk to you about it. But the physical test, just make sure that the company that's doing it, there are specific companies that do these and they're certified. Really seeing how they can get in, see if they can piggyback off of somebody's badge if you have a key badge or a key scanner in there. And really, these physical tests are seeing if they're able to get into your server room, how far they can get through your physical location without getting detected. Last but not least is the web application penetration testing. These are great. If you guys, the one example that I'll always use is, because everybody has this, is a bank account, and a lot of you guys probably have the mobile app, the mobile banking app on their phone. That would be a web application pen test. Any homegrown application that you've made or that you guys do yourselves, if you guys do those, that's something that you guys should also regularly be getting tested. But yeah, the different types of web tests. I mean, if I had to choose any of one that you guys should definitely be doing, I would definitely say the internal pen test. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Joe.
Yeah, I agree. And it's those web apps are interesting anywhere where, a lot of times we use web apps because they are convenient to access because they work well even across the internet. So we use those web apps so I can connect to something remotely. But if we aren't testing the security of those applications, we are potentially allowing somebody a real easy avenue in. And that web app test is different than others. The other one on this that I see a lot when I go into new organizations is the wireless. Most organizations are pretty good about saying, okay, we've carved out a guest wireless that's different from our internal production wireless, but then they haven't gone to the extra measure of really isolating that guest wireless from their production network. So they've got a guest wireless and they have a production wireless. They think, okay, I've stood up a guest wireless, but as soon as I connect to that guest wireless, I'm effectively on the production network. They don't realize there's got to be some more work done to segregate those two. And the reason that's a risk is because now all I've got to do is have a visitor in my building. They say, hey, can I connect to your wireless? You give them the password, or maybe you print it on a little card and you hand it to them. And then they come back at night, park in your parking lot. They can probably get on that same wireless network and they're effectively on your production network. And that gives them that backdoor access exactly like somebody who clicks on that phishing link and allows somebody remote access. Now they can start moving through the network. So that's a really important one. But again, I think the primary focus here definitely needs to be on that internal pen test because, again, we've said it a couple times and it's come up in a couple different examples, how quickly an attacker can move through your internal network if they get a footprint. And that internal pen test is really going to help you nail that down. All right, so common vulnerabilities. So these are kind of the common things we see with organizations we walked into. And number one on that, lacking user employee education. Right? We just really see a lot of organizations that are not doing their due diligence to train their users. And that's why the phishing attacks are so successful. That's why 95% of successful attacks have come through phishing, because organizations typically are not doing a great job of training their employees. They may do an annual cybersecurity awareness training that they make their employees go to. But you know what? That's great for about 90 days. Statistics show that when I do training, my employees are on their kind of best behavior for about 90 days before they start to forget and they start to lapse into bad habits. So we've got to be more recurring on that. Unpatched and misconfigured servers. I mean, we see this a lot, and this one is another big one. Misconfigured servers would be something that potentially it's exposed to the internet, you may not even realize it, or you've exposed something to the internet because you want somebody to have easy remote access, but then you haven't taken the extra steps to harden that system. So that becomes an avenue for an attack. And unpatched servers in unpatched systems, simply because so many attacks out there are designed by their nature to spread automatically. The Windows DNS vulnerability that was recently exposed and a patch was released for it. What made that so significant was that vulnerability was such that if somebody could find a way to exploit it, they could very easily move from DNS server to DNS server to DNS server. So that could be used as a way to propagate an attack in the environment. So we've got to patch those things. End-of-life equipment. You've got to retire those old systems. If you're still running Windows XP, shut it down, get it out of there. And more importantly, if you're running Windows servers or end-of-life firewalls, end-of-life switches, those are all things that become potential vulnerabilities that you've got to drive out of your environment. Improperly configured firewalls. This is just somebody allowing somebody access in that shouldn't be there, or you think you're allowing access for convenience and you don't realize you've opened a big back door for attackers. A lot of times we see this with organizations that somebody wants to be able to watch the cameras and log into the DVR remotely. So they say, okay, we'll open a port to the DVR. They don't think about the fact that that DVR is an operating system. It needs to be patched. It needs to be secured. So now I've got an exposed system that's open to the internet. Same thing with HVAC systems. We sometimes see organizations say, hey, you know what? I want to be able to modify on the weekend. Maybe I've got somebody coming in, so I want to be able to bump down the AC during the summer. So for convenience, I'm going to open up a port to my HVAC system so so I can get to it from the internet. Again, you've created a potential backdoor there. There are secure ways to do these things, but a lot of times people don't put the thought into it. And then having those policies and procedures, and that's an incident response plan. That is a computer use policy or an acceptable use policy. It's cyber liability insurance. Cyber liability insurance is critical to have that in place, because that can provide, not only protect you from your financial liability, but it also helps with incident response. Anything you want to add on this list, Bo?
You pretty much nailed it, Joe. Just one thing that, I will add on to that. I'm going back to that example I gave you about the insurance company, and really touching on this last point that Joe had just mentioned, having policies. A very important policy is a vendor management policy, and really you guys, making the vendors that you're working with prove that they're doing everything that you guys should be doing too as well. Because if you're doing all these things like that insurance company was, and the vendors that you're dealing with aren't, you're going to be just susceptible to a breach just because of a different vendor. So really making sure your vendors are doing their due diligence too as well, is something that, just one other thing I'd like to add to that, Joe.
Yeah, no, that is a great point. I appreciate that. Definitely, because we need to know the people we are working with are safe. So what are your next steps? What do you do from here? I would say that option one on here, if you have absolutely know what your cybersecurity maturity is, what tiers of that NIST framework you have covered, you don't know whether you're following those process best practices or not, have a security gap analysis done. That's going to be bringing in an expert to really look at your environment and go through those tiers of the framework, identify, okay, yeah, you've got antivirus, but your signatures aren't up to date, or you're patching your servers, you're not patching your workstations. And they'll look at some of those processes and really help you analyze how mature they are, and really give you a mitigation plan and a strategy for starting to move up that ladder to cybersecurity maturity. If you feel like you've got those preventative solutions in place, and maybe you even have some detect, and you've got some of those other tiers in place, and you think, you know what, we're in pretty good shape, but we haven't done a lot of testing, then do that vulnerability scan. Do it externally, do it internally. It's going to point out some of those flaws and some weaknesses that maybe you haven't even thought about. Some systems like that DVR maybe, or that HVAC system that nobody thinks about that potentially have vulnerabilities in them. Those scans will identify those types of things. And then if you really think, okay, you know what, we've got all 5 tiers in place, we got a strong program, we've got our processes, we've got our policies, then go ahead and engage an organization to do that penetration test, just to validate that you are as buttoned down as you think you are. Anything you want to add on this one, Bo?
No, Joe, you absolutely nailed it. Definitely thanks everybody for taking time and listening to us. Joe and myself are very, very passionate about these things. The one thing that I hope you guys can take away, security, it's what we always say, it's a journey. It's not a destination. It's ongoing. It's over and over and over again. You don't do one pen test on your secure. You don't do one gap analysis on your secure. You don't do one. It's ongoing. It's never ending. The one thing that we always say, it's not if, it's when you're going to get breached, and having all the key things in place to make it as less stressful as possible is the best thing you guys can do.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, and I could not say that more clearly. You need to build a long-term plan around cybersecurity. You can find that you're secure today, and tomorrow you could be insecure because something changes in the environment, or something new is found out, is identified. So really making it a journey and constantly staying on top of it is so critical. Bo, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate you joining me on this. And for all of you that joined us today live, I really appreciate it. I appreciate you participating in the polls, and I hope you got some takeaways from this.
Thanks.
Yeah, and guys, thank both of you. We do have a couple questions that would love to share with you. So the first one here, which I think is just a really good, simple question, which is, okay, I think we need a penetration test. What should we do? Who do we turn to? Who do we talk to?
Joe.
I was going to say, well, you could talk to, certainly go find a company like Cyberstone. Hey, Cyberstone's on here. You got an easy name. They do this. They are experts in this. Talk to, if you have a partner like a VC3 and VC3 is your managed services, your provider. Frankly, I don't want to do your pen test if I'm your managed services provider. I want to bring somebody in from the outside, right? Because if I'm responsible for supporting and building the environment, I don't want to be the one testing it. So I'm going to go talk to Bo and say, hey, Bo, I need a penetration test done for this organization. So find somebody like Bo, find somebody like Cyberstone that can do that penetration test and has that capability and those qualifications. And then Bo, I would ask, what kind of things do the organizations need to give to you so that you can price that out for them and really help build that proposal?
Yep. So absolutely, Joe. Great question. And just to add on, we don't even pen test ourselves. We'll hire an outside firm to pen test ourselves. So Joe saying the outside third party, I couldn't agree with him more. And even on top of that, the clients that we do work with on a regular basis, some we've had contracts with for multiple years. It's definitely best to rotate your security vendors minimally every 3 years. As much as we want to work with organizations longer than that, we'll do 3 penetration tests for them, over the course of 3 years or more than that. And then they think we're kind of crazy because we're, okay, listen, as much as we want to do it year 4, we really recommend that you guys go, because we can just get that tunnel vision. We can get that, and get another objective third party. 9 out of 10 times they are coming back, because, what other vendor, what other company is going to say, hey, you know what, we don't want your business. You should go to a different company. Here's a competitor of ours. Go use them. But honestly, that's really what you should be doing. And any other organization that says different, they're not doing you guys justice. The things that we need, when scoping these and to figure it out, I'm more than happy if you guys want to reach out to Dave and Joe. You guys can get my contact information. We can set up a more in-depth conversation regarding this. But really, the things that we take into consideration are active IPs. How many users are on your network, both internal and external. And the amount of locations that you guys have, whether it's one or multiple, and that usually is not a factor as long as they're all connected. But if there's 5 different locations on 5 different networks, our team is really going to have to do 5 different penetration tests because they're all separate. But if you're in 5 locations and they're all talking to each other, it's one network. We're good. That's one, and we can usually keep the cost down pretty low. But to get you an accurate count, I'm more than happy to have a conversation offline after this, guys.
Great. Thanks, Bo.
You're welcome.
That's good. So reach out to your IT partner or internal IT resources. And rule of thumb, third party really should be doing the pen tests, not your own IT department or partner. That's good. I have another one here around vulnerability scans. And I think this is a good question. You all were talking about those are obviously more frequent, maybe even monthly, quarterly. What does it look like when you get that scan report? What do we do with that information? What's the next step?
Oh, that's a good question. So really those scans can be highly technical. So sometimes those scans are going to reveal things that are going to be meaningless to somebody who is not an IT professional. Now, if you've got an IT team, if you've got
I feel like you're
IT
talking
team,
to me here, Joey.
yeah, then they should be able to deduct and understand what those scans are. But a good scan is not only going to give you information about kind of what the vulnerabilities are, but most of the good scanning tools will also have some direction on how to mitigate that vulnerability. Most of the scanning tools that I have used will say things like, hey, you're running this version of Java, it's got exposures in it, you need to be running X version of Java, right? It'll tell you very specifically, you need to upgrade to this particular version to mitigate those vulnerabilities. So most of the scanning tools will give pretty specific instruction, but those scanned results can be highly technical. So again, have an IT person or have a trusted consultant, trusted vendor that you can work with that can help provide that guidance.
Perfect. And it sounds like that really but that really goes back to that common vulnerability piece that we walked through earlier, right? It's identifying a lot of those, the unpatched servers, those sorts of things. And the IT professional kind of knows what to do once they get that information. Go ahead.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna mimic off of Joe. Yeah, everything. You'll see, different organizations do it, different ways. They'll provide you with different information, but the scan should all really be the same. I know when Cyberstone does a scan, we're just gonna pull out, it's gonna spit out a huge report. We'll put it down, like I said, in the high, medium, and lows, and then we'll actually get you a workbook that shows you all the vulnerabilities. You'll click a link and it'll show you how to remediate and how to do that. But echoing once again off of Joe, it is very technical. I know about all these things, but actually having me fix that, I wouldn't be the guy. I'd be calling up Joe and saying, hey, can you fix this for me? So, if that's something that you guys want to see what a sample report looks like, we do have a bunch of redacted sample reports that, once again, if you want to get a hold of VC3, more than happy to share those out.
Perfect. Well, gentlemen, thank you again for your time. Everybody listening online, thank you for joining us, for sticking with us this far. We hope you found this is helpful. And if you're looking for more IT resources, every week we're putting out something new on our blog, written content and also video content. And be on the lookout for new webinars coming from VC3 in the future as well. But thank you, everybody, and hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks all. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Bye.